7 men standing on the deck, motionless, staring at the horizon. The whalers rowing toward them wave. Not one of them answers. When the boat touches the hull, they understand why. Those 7 men are frozen, solid. They've been dead for nearly 20 years, standing upright, and they never fell. And below, in the cabin, the captain still sits at his desk, pen in hand, writing. The question we're going to try to answer today is a single one. What happened to the entire crew of the sailing ship Jenny, found intact in the ice of Antarctica, and why, after nearly 2 centuries, has no one ever managed to prove those people existed? Because that is the most unsettling part of all this. It's not just that they froze to death, it's that the closer you look, the more it dissolves in your hands. Let's start with the story as it's told. The account says the Jenny was an English schooner, an English sailing ship, the subject of an unproven legend that, according to the tale, was trapped in an ice barrier in the Drake Passage in 1823, only to be rediscovered in 1840 by a whaler, with the bodies still aboard, preserved by the Antarctic cold. The Drake Passage. Remember that name because it matters. It has the roughest seas known anywhere on Earth, largely because the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Southern Ocean all converge in that single corridor, and with no landmass to slow the wind, the gusts reach brutal speeds. That's where the Jenny sailed. According to the legend, she was an English schooner that set out from the Isle of Wight and made a successful voyage to the port of Callao in Peru, just outside Lima. She was heading home. She had to cross the Drake Passage again, and that's where everything stopped. But wait, because what the men of the Hope found was not a shipwreck. It was something far stranger. Let's go to September 1840. A whaler, ironically named Hope, was sailing through the Drake Passage, the narrow arm of sea that separates Cape Horn from the South Shetland Islands of Antarctica, when it unexpectedly came upon the remains of the Jenny frozen in the ice. At first they thought it was crude. They saw a battered ship, and though wrecked, it seemed to have people aboard. In fact, 7 men were standing on the main deck, and only as they drew closer did they understand that those men weren't in formation enduring the cold. They were frozen solid. Picture the scene. You call out to some men, they don't answer. You row closer, and you discover they've been dead for nearly 2 decades, held upright by the ice itself. The captain of the Hope decides to climb aboard, and what he finds below is worse. Captain Brighton of the Hope was the first to board the Jenny to investigate. Below deck, he found the captain, frozen in a chilling pose while writing his final entry in the ship's log. Seated, upright, the pen still in his fingers, as if he'd stopped writing just a second before they arrived. And beside him, according to the account, he was not alone. Frozen in time next to the captain's body was also the body of a woman, believed to be his wife, and a dog. A captain, his wife, a dog, and an entire crew. All stopped in the instant of their death, so well preserved they seemed to be sleeping. And here comes the part that grabs anyone, the ship's log, because that log said how long it had taken them to die. According to the most widespread versions, the last entry was devastating. May 4th, 1823, no food for 71 days. I am the only one still alive. That was the captain's final entry in the log of the Jenny. 71 days, trapped in the ice, watching his companions die one by one, until a single man remained, writing those last words with fingers that had no strength left. But pay attention, because when historians went to the original document, they found something that doesn't add up. Not even the date matches. In the oldest and most serious version, the one from the original text, the last entry is not from May. The log had been written up to January 17, 1823. The last port of call had been Callao, near Lima, in Peru, and Brighton took the log to return it to the ship's owners. And that January 17th entry said something else. Reproduced in a Prague newspaper in 1841, it reads, in translation, January 17, 1839. Today it is 71 days that our ship has been trapped in the ice. All our efforts were in vain. Last night the fire went out, and all our captain's attempts to revive it failed. This morning his wife died of hunger and cold, along with 5 sailors of the crew. There is no hope left. Notice the detail. The fire goes out, and from there, death. Without heat, in Antarctica, the countdown is a matter of hours. That detail of the extinguished fire is exactly what's going to give the whole story away. Because we'd heard it before, on another ship, in another ocean. This is where the mystery takes a turn, because when a researcher sat down to look for the Jenny in the archives, he found nothing. In 2022, the scientific journal Polar Record published a study that reassessed the legend from scratch. And the conclusion was blunt. The academic analysis found no records confirming the existence of the Jenny, its crew, or the ship that supposedly discovered it, the Hope in the British Maritime Archives, in the whaling logs, or in the press of the time. Not a trace. A ship that, if it existed, would have sailed from the Isle of Wight with papers, owners, insurance. Nothing. And there's more. The oldest known source of the story appears to be an article in the Wiener Zeitung published on February 19, 1841, and in the following weeks the same text was printed in at least 7 other newspapers. In other words, we don't start from a naval report. We start from a newspaper story that was copied from one paper to the next. And that story, where did it come from? Here's where it gets truly fascinating, because the researcher followed the trail backward and arrived at another ghost ship, an older one, on the opposite side of the planet. The Octavius was a legendary ghost ship of the 18th century. According to the story, the 3-masted schooner was found west of Greenland by the whaler Herald on October 11, 1775, and when the party boarded her, they found the 28 crew members below deck, dead, frozen, and almost perfectly preserved. And the captain? The captain's body was supposedly still at the desk in his cabin, pen in hand, exactly like in the legend of the Jenny, the ship's log open in front of him. The same picture, the frozen captain writing, the fire gone out, the dead woman aboard. The story of the Jenny is the story of the Octavius, moved from the Arctic to the Antarctic. And there's still one detail that raises the hairs on your neck, because it connects the legend to something that really did happen. The name. Weddell the explorer commanded a ship called the Jane, and it's probably no coincidence that the ghost ship is named Jenny. Especially since there is no other whaler or sealer named Jenny on record from the period. Jenny is, in fact, the original diminutive of Jane. James Weddell really was there, in those waters, on those very dates. The last entry in the Jenny's log is dated January 17, 1823, and on February 17, 1823, James Weddell pushed through the ice into the sea that would later bear his name, passing the southernmost position ever reached by Cook. And he wasn't sailing alone. The Jane was not alone in the ice in February 1823. She was accompanied by a cutter commanded by the Scotsman Matthew Brisbane, and although that ship was not called Hope but Beaufoy, Brisbane would in fact go on to command a ship called Hope in 1828. Do you see it? A real ship, the Jane, turned into Jenny, a real companion who later commanded a ship called Hope. Real dates of Antarctic exploration, an earlier Arctic legend, that of the Octavius, all mixed, cooked, and served up as if it were a real event. So let's go back to the question we began with. What happened to the entire crew of the sailing ship Jenny? The honest answer, the one science gives, is the most uncomfortable of all. Probably nothing happened to them. Because that crew probably never existed. Given all the evidence gathered, it's no surprise that no proof of the Jenny's existence was ever found. Everything points to it being a legend though, as so often happens, this sailor's tale isn't entirely spun from nothing. And that's the real chill, that for nearly 2 centuries, millions of us have imagined 7 frozen men standing on deck, a dead captain with a pen in his hand, a woman and a dog frozen at his side, and that this whole image, so sharp, so real, so terrible, was built from scraps of other stories and the names of ships that really did sail that ice. The Jenny was never trapped in the ice of the Drake Passage. It was trapped in something far harder to break, in our memory.